I've been on the hunt for something new in the blockchain world, but I have to admit, it's been pretty difficult to find truly amazing projects that can actually deliver on their fundamental value. I'm pretty sure that's why you're watching this video, because you're probably also searching for what people refer to as hidden gems. Many of these projects have a difficult time breaking out of small communities because they go against the typical ways of thinking. Someone might come out with something brand new, and then all of a sudden there's tons of hype, over-exuberance. VC money comes flowing in and promises you getting rich because it's different this time. But when you look underneath the hood, it's really not all that different. We come back to the exact same place all the time. Bitcoin is dead and blockchain is just a fad. So where does that leave us? What do we do now? I can't speak for other people, but I do think that blockchain still has a lot of potential future use cases, especially in areas where decentralization and digital ownership are very important. We can't build a decentralized system but launch it with VCs and ICOs. We can't make permissionless systems but charge exorbitant fees just to access them. And more importantly, we simply can't solve the wrong problem and then make it seem like a breakthrough solution. We need solutions that come at the problem from a completely different angle. And what would that even look like? Well, I think it's going to be something that doesn't follow an existing trend. It's going to make its own. And I also think it's going to make you think about blockchain in an entirely different way. I think I found it in this white paper. And when I mean different, I mean really radically different. It's going to be paradigm shifting. What I'd like to do with you guys is go through this white paper line by line and dig into some of the biggest ideas behind the Koinos blockchain and hopefully get you to understand what they're trying to achieve in a better way. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to read to you the specific highlights that I think are the most important for this white paper. Then you can go in and see how important that piece of information is to you so you can better understand what Koinos is trying to achieve. So in this abstract, which is what you would read if you didn't want to read the entire white paper, Koinos is claiming that they're going to have a decentralized network. It's going to have free to use application through this mechanism called mana. And that mana prices things in opportunity cost rather than tokens. And it also talks about a new consensus algorithm called proof of burn. It's the first time we're seeing something like that hit the market. And the purpose of proof of burn is to maximize efficiency, decentralization, and to ensure that it's provably egalitarian. The abstract also makes indication that the blocks produce a VRF, or a verifiable random function. And that means that you're going to get a random number produced at every single block. It's going to be a great thing for things like games that need some type of randomness built into the chain, and so they don't have to figure out how to create their own random numbers. At the end of this abstract, it points towards forkless upgrades due to its modular upgradability. They're claiming a lot of things in this abstract, and it should make you want to read a lot more into this 10-page white paper. You typically will find some mention of previous work in white papers because everyone is trying to improve something that already exists. And in the previous work section, they talk about Bitcoin and Ethereum, specifically saying that fees are used to regulate network usage and proof of work is used to regulate state transition. What they're alluding to with fees is that fees are not actually used to support the network itself, only there to regulate network usage. In other words, how often people submit transactions to the blockchain. One of the most important parts of the previous work section is the mention that they were the core developers of Steem, meaning that they had experience developing a blockchain in the past. Now, Steem as a project eventually got taken over in a hostile exchange attack. They mentioned that later on in this white paper. But when they left Steem, they wanted to continue working on blockchain. But they realized that the applications that they wanted to launch could not be launched on any blockchain at all. But if you wanted to launch an application on these other chains, they realized that they were not truly feeless, even though they claimed to be feeless. And more importantly, none of these systems were actually truly decentralized because of how they launched their token and their consensus algorithm. And what that really means is that if you're going to ICO and use a consensus mechanism such as proof of stake, you're really concerned about who holds your tokens. And what that means is that you're not going to distribute your token fairly. You run the risk of someone who buys an outsized portion of your token during your ICO to absolutely control block production. And that's why you typically do not have a very decentralized ICO when you're using something like proof of stake. Now, in the last paragraph of this section, they really wanted to put an emphasis on the fact that they wanted to create a highly accessible blockchain with free to use dApps, feeless transactions, free accounts, and free smart contract execution. The end result would be a general purpose blockchain that was not just an Ethereum competitor, but the first genuine alternative to Ethereum. And I think that's an important distinction to make. So if you choose to use an alternative to Ethereum, you actually are operating under a completely different set of principles. Coin. Now in this section, it's pretty short. The main items I've highlighted is that they say most tokens have a very simple token economic design, or tokenomics. And that is that people use the token to pay for fees. Counterintuitively, keyword, if you remove fees, you actually create something that's more dynamic, more flexible, and more performant. I think this section just really highlights how counterintuitive some of this thinking is, because it turns out the majority of people on Twitter are actually very, very keyed in on the fact that removing fees is very counterintuitive how they think these systems actually perform. Token supply and distribution. They specifically mentioned that the coin token was originally launched on Ethereum, and the only way to obtain it is to perform a proof of work mining, which means you had to run a mining algorithm, submit hashes to the Ethereum blockchain, and as a reward for submitting those hashes, you would get coin, ERC20 coin. Obviously, one of the benefits to launching on Ethereum is that you're already on the world's most widely used smart contract platform. Anyone who owns the ERC20 token, when mainnet goes live, which will be later in 2022, the token balances for mainnet wallets will be initialized by taking a snapshot. In other words, if you hold your ERC20 coin tokens inside of an Ethereum wallet, they'll take an image of the network and redistribute the mainnet tokens based on who has how much coin tokens in their wallet. Now that snapshot hasn't happened yet, but as we get closer to mainnet, they'll announce the exact date on when that snapshot will occur. You won't have to do anything unless you're providing liquidity on something like Uniswap with their ERC20 coin. In this section, they also talk about for the first time how new tokens are created, and they've set that number to be 2%, which means that the inflation rate of coin will be 2% every year. However, because of the proof of burn algorithm, and that burn component can lower the actual inflation rate, causing temporary periods of deflation. What this basically means is that the mainnet token supply has the ability to contract and expand depending on the ecosystem's economic factors. The last paragraph for token supply and distribution also alludes to the fact that you can use coin without ever actually having to acquire the native coin token. They clarify that by saying mainnet tokens can be transferred without paying any fee, and the mana contained within them allows holders to use the network without spending any coin. And as a result, users do not have to purchase accounts, pay to execute smart contracts, or even acquire coin tokens in order to use the blockchain. Fast and free. I think the most important takeaway from this section is that it speaks specifically about how the coin token can empower people to exchange value in seconds without losing a fee, and opening up an entirely new and currently unimaginable business model to entrepreneurs and developers. I think the biggest takeaway from this last sentence is that they have an emphasis on entrepreneurs and developers. If you're developing on other blockchains, you'll likely find that no matter what you do to create your blockchain product, you will have to find a way to acquire users to the chain. These barriers to entry are one of the biggest reasons why blockchain hasn't been widely adopted yet. But because Koinos focus on being insanely accessible, you're going to be able to build products without having to worry about how your users are going to try blockchain first. And that's going to open up unimaginable business models that we do not have access to right now. Forkless upgradability. In this section, they talk about their first-hand experience in developing Steem and how hard forks were actually holding back blockchain adoption. And that's because each time you want to change a blockchain, what you're doing is you're responding to some user reaction. And if you can't adjust for that user demand, then you don't have a blockchain that evolves with the needs of the user. This is where they talk about one of the most important features of Koinos. The blockchain framework that Koinos has developed allows any behavior to be added to the blockchain as a smart contract. And fundamentally, there are two classes of smart contracts on Koinos: a user smart contract and a system smart contract. The main difference is that user smart contracts can't be uploaded by anyone creating any behavior they like, and system smart contracts are shipped with Koinos natively. But anyone who creates a user smart contract that people find extremely useful could be added as a system smart contract through their governance system. And this can all be done without performing a hard fork, because it's only a matter of uploading a smart contract and not changing how the business logic of Koinos works. And in one short sentence, they clearly state that the Koinos blockchain framework is effectively the world's simplest, fully functional, general-purpose blockchain built with a microservice architecture. And the combination of their technology stack allows for any behavior to be added to the blockchain without requiring a hard fork. So I have to cut this video right here because we're approaching the point where it's going to be far too long for me to cover the remaining items. We still have to go over universal language support, mana, how mana is implemented, proof of burn, how virtual mining works, deflation, the verifiable random function, liquidity, decentralized governance, upgrading governance, and the conclusion. So stay tuned for the second part of this video where I complete my deep dive into the Koinos white paper. Please like, subscribe, add comments below, ask any questions about anything you're unclear about, and I'll be sure to answer that question in my next video. Check you later.